Welcome to 1,000 Nights and one Night. And now, when it was the 121st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the young merchant continued to Taj al Muluk. Then the young lady said to me, I fear lest thou fall into some disgrace and find none to deliver thee from it. Alas for thy cousin, and the pity of her! Would I had known her before her death, that I might have requited by waiting upon her the fair service she did me. The mercy of Allah Almighty be upon her, for she kept her secret and revealed not what she suffered, and but for her thou hast never foregathered with me, no, never. But there is one thing I desire of thee. I asked, What is it? And she answered, It is that thou bring me to her grave, that I may visit her in the tomb wherein she is, and write some couplets thereon. I rejoined, Tomorrow, if Allah please. I slept with her that night, and she ceased not saying after every hour, Wouldst thou hast told me of thy cousin before her death? And I asked her, What is the meaning of the two saws she taught me? Faith is fair and unfaith is foul. But she made no answer. As soon as it was day, she rose, and taking a purse of gold pieces, said to me, Come, show me her tomb, that I may visit it, and grave some verses thereon, and build a dome over it, and commend her to Allah's mercy, and bestow these dinars on alms for her soul. I replied, To hear is to obey, and walked on before her, whilst she followed me, giving alms as she went, and saying to all upon her she lavished bounty, This is an alms for the soul of Azizah, who kept her counsel till she drank the cup of death, and never told the secret of her love. And she stinted not thus to give alms, and say, For Azizah's soul, till the purse was empty, and she came to the grave. And when she looked at the tomb, she wept and threw herself on it. Then pulling out a chisel of steel and a light hammer, she graved therewith upon the headstone in fine small characters these couplets. I passed by a broken tomb amid a garth right sheen, whereon 7 blooms of Nu'uman glowed with cramsoy. Quoth I, Who sleepeth in this tomb? Quoth answering Earth, Before a lover Hades' tomb bent reverently. Quoth I, May Allah help thee, O thou slain of love, and grant thee home in heaven and paradise height to see. Hapless are lovers all entombed in their tombs, where amid living folk the dust weighs heavenly. Fain would I plant a garden blooming round thy grave, and water every flower with teardrops flowing free. Then she turned away in tears, and I with her, and returned to the garden, where she said to me, By Allah, I conjure thee never leave me. To hear is to obey, replied I. Then I gave myself wholly up to her, and paid her frequent visits. She was good and generous to me, and as often as I passed the night with her, she would make much of me, and would ask me of the 2 saws my cousin Azizah told my mother, and I repeat them to her. And matters ceased not to be on this wise, and I continued for a whole year, eating and drinking and enjoying dalliance, and wearing change of rich raiment, until I waxed gross and fat, so that I lost all thought of sorrowing until I waxed, and I clean forgot my cousin Azizah. And on my New Year's Day I went to the bath, where I refreshed myself and put on a suit of sumptuous clothes. Then coming out, I drank a cup of wine, and smelt the scent of new gear, which was perfumed with various essence, and my breast was broadened. Thereby I knew not the tricks of fate, nor the changing ways of time. When the hour of night prayer came, I was minded to repair to my lover, but being the worse for wine, I knew not where going to her whether I went, so my drunkenness turned me into a by-street called Syndic Street. And the while I walked up the street, behold, I caught sight of an old woman faring with a lighted taper in her hand, and in the other a folded letter. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 122nd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the young merchant whose name was Aziz continued to Taj al Muluk. And when I entered the street called Syndic Street, behold, I caught sight of an old woman walking with a lighted taper in one hand and in the other a folded letter. And I drew her near, and lo, she was weeping and repeating these couplets. O glad news bearer, welcome, welcome! Hail, how sweet thy speech to me! What treat thy tale! O messenger from him whose weal I love, God bless thee long as breath, soft morning gale. Now, when she saw me, she asked, O my son, canst thou read? And I answered of my officiousness, Yes, old Nanti. Then take this letter and read it to me. And when she handed it to me, I took it, and unfolding it, read to her, and behold, it was from an absent man to his friends and lovers whom he greeted. And when she heard its purport, she rejoiced at the good tidings, and blessing me, saying, Allah dispel thine anxiety, even as thou hast dispelled mine. Then she took the letter and walked on. Meanwhile I was urged by a call of nature, and sat down on my heels to make water. When I had ended, I stood up and wiped the orifice with a pebble, and then letting down my clothes, I was about to wend my way, when suddenly the old woman came up to me again, and bending down over my hand, kissed it and said, O my master, the Lord give thee joy of thy youth. I entreat thee to walk with me a few steps, as far as yonder door. For I told them what thou didst read to me of the letter, and they believed me not. So come with me 2 steps, and read them the letter from behind the door, and accept the prayers of a righteous woman. I inquired, What is the history of this letter? And she replied, O my son, this letter is from my son, who hath been absent for a term of 10 years. He set out with a stock of merchandise, and tarried long in foreign parts, till we lost hope of him, and supposed him to be dead. Now after all that delay cometh his letter from him, and he hath a sister, who weepeth for him night and day. So I said to her, He is well and all right. But she will not believe me, and declares there is no help but thou bring me who will read this letter in my presence, that my heart may be at rest and my mind at ease. Thou knowest, O my son, that all who love are wont to think evil. So be good enough to go with me, and read to her this letter, standing behind the curtain, whilst I call her sister, to listen within the door. So shalt thou dispel our heed, and fulfill our need. Verily, quoth the apostle of Allah, whom Allah bless and preserve, whoso easeth the trouble of one of the troublous world, Allah will ease him of 100 troubles. And according to another tradition, whoso easeth his brother of one of the troubles of his troublous world, Allah shall relieve him of 72 troubles on the day of resurrection. And I have betaken myself to thee, so disappoint me not. Replied I, To hear is to obey. Do thou go before me. So she walked on, devancing me, and I followed her a little way, till she came to the gate of a large and handsome mansion, whose door was plated with copper. I stood behind the door, whilst the old woman carried out in Persian, and ere I knew it, a damsel ran up with light and nimble step. She had tucked up her trousers to her knees, so that I saw a pair of calves that confounded thinking and sight. And the maid herself was, as the poet saith, describing her, O thou who bearest leg calf, better to suggest, for passion matted amorous better things above. Towards its lover doth the bowl go round and run, cup and cupbearer only drive as daft with love. Now these legs were like 2 pillars of alabaster, adorned with anklets of gold, wherein were set stones of price. And the damsel had tucked up the end of her gown under her armpit, and had rolled up her sleeves to the elbow, so that I could see her white wrist, whereon were 2 pairs of bracelets with clasps of great pearl. And round her neck was a collar of costly gems. Her ears were adorned with pendants of pearls, and on her head she wore a kerchief of brocade, brand new, and embroidered with jewels of price. And she had thrust the skirt of her shift into her trouser string, being busy with some household business. So when I saw her in this undress, I was confounded at her beauty, for she was like a shining sun. Then she said, with soft, choice speech, never heard I sweeter, O my mother, is this he who cometh to read the letter? It is, replied the old woman, and she put out her hand to me with the letter. Now between her and the door was a distance of about a half a rod. So I stretched forth my hand to take the letter from her, and thrust head and shoulders within the door, thinking to draw near her and read the letter, when before I knew what the design was, the old woman butted her head against my back and pushed me forwards with the letter in my hand, so that ere I could take thought, I found myself in the middle of the hall, far beyond the vestibule. Then she entered faster than a flash of blinding levin, and naught to do but to shut the door. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 123rd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the youth Aziz pursued to Taj al-Muluk. When the old woman pushed me forwards, I found myself ere I could think inside the vestibule, and the old woman entered faster than a flash of blinding levin, and had naught to do but to shut the door. When the girl saw me in the vestibule, she came up to me, and strained me to her bosom, and threw me to the floor. Then she sat straddled upon my breast, and kneaded my belly with her fingers, till I well lost nigh of my senses. Thereupon she took me by the hand, and led me, unable to resist for the violence of her pressure, through 7 vestibules, whilst the old woman forward went, as with a lighted candle, till we came to a great saloon, with 4 estrades, whereupon a horseman might play polo. Then she released me, saying, Open thine eyes. So I opened them, still giddy for the excess of her embracing and pressing, and saw that the whole saloon was built of the finest marbles and alabaster, and its furniture was of silk and brocade, even to the cushions and mattresses. Therein also were 2 benches of yellow brass, and a couch of red gold set with pearls and precious stones befitting none save kings like thyself. And off the saloon were smaller sitting rooms, and the whole place was redolent of wealth. Then she asked, O Aziz, which is the lifer to thee, life or death? Life, answered I. And she said, If life be lifer to thee, marry me. Quoth I, Indeed, I should hate to marry the like of thee. Quoth she, If thou marry me, thou wilt at least be safe from the daughter of Delilah, the wily one. I asked, And who be the daughter of the wily one? Whereupon she laughed and replied, "'Tis she who hath companioned with thee this day for year and 4 months. May the Almighty destroy and afflict her with one worse than herself. By Allah, there liveth not a more perfidious than she. How many men hath she slain before thee, and what deeds has she not done? Nor can I understand how thou hast been all the time in her company, yet she hath not killed thee, nor done thee a mischief." When I heard her words, I marveled with exceeding marvel, and said, O my lady, who made thee to know her? She said, I know her as the age knoweth its calamities. But now I would fain have thee tell me all that has passed between you 2, that I may ken the cause of thy deliverance from her. So I told her all that had happened between us, including the story of my cousin Azizah. She expressed her pity when she heard of the death, and her eyes ran over with tears, and she clapped hand on hand and cried out, Her youth was lost on Allah's way, and may the Lord bless thee for her good works. By Allah, O Aziz, she who died for thee was the cause of thy preservation from the daughter of Delilah the wily, and but for her thou hast been lost. And now she is dead. I fear for thee from the crafty one's perfidy and mischief, but my throat is choking, and I cannot speak. Quoth I, Ay, by Allah, all this happened even as thou sayest. And she shook her head and cried, There liveth not this day the like of Azizah. I continued, And on her deathbed she bade me repeat to my lover these 2 saws, Faith is fair, unfaith is foul. When she heard me say this, she exclaimed, O Aziz, by Allah, these same words save thee from dying by her hand. And now my heart is at ease for thee from her, for she will never kill thee. And the daughter of thy uncle preserve thee during her lifetime and after her death. By Allah, I have desired thee day after day, but could not get at thee till this time when I tricked thee and outwitted thee, for thou art a raw youth, and knowest not the wiles of young women, nor the deadly guile of old women. Rejoined I, No, by Allah. Then said she to me, Be of good cheer, and eyes clear. The dead hath found Allah's grace, and the live shall be in good case. Thou art a handsome youth, and I do not desire thee but according to the ordinance of Allah and his apostle, on whom be salutations and salvation. Whatever thou requirest of money and stuff, thou shalt have forthright, without stint, and I will not impose any toil on thee, no, no, never. For there is with me always bread baked, and water in the pot. All I need of thee is that thou wilt do with me even as the cock doth. I asked, And what doth the cock? Upon this she laughed and clapped her hands and fell over on her back for excess of merriment. Then she sat up and smiled and said, O light of my eyes, really dost thou not know what a cock's duty is? No, by Allah, replied I. And she said, The cock's duty is to eat and drink and tread. I, I was abashed at her words and asked, Is that the cock's duty? Yes, answered she, and all I ask of thee now is to gird thy loins and strengthen thy will and fetter thy best. Then she clapped her hands and cried out, saying, O my mother, bring forward those who are with thee. And behold, in came the old woman, accompanied by 4 lawful witnesses, and carrying a veil of silk. Then she lighted 4 candles, whilst the witnesses saluted me and sat down, and the girl veiled herself with the veil, and deputed one of them to execute the contract on her behalf. So they wrote out the marriage bond, and she testified to having received the whole sum settled upon her, both the half in advance and the half in arrears, and that she was indebted to me in the sum of 10,000 dirhams. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 124th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the young merchant continued to Taj al-Muluk. When they wrote out the marriage contract, she testified to having received the whole sum settled upon her, the half in advance and the half in arrears, and that she was indebted to me in the sum of 10,000 dirhams. She paid the witnesses their wage, and they withdrew whence they came. Thereupon she arose, cast off her clothes, and stood in a chemise of fine silk edged with gold lace. After which she took off her trousers and seized my hand and led me up to the couch, saying, There is no sin in a lawful put-in. She lay down on the couch, outspread upon her back, and drawing me onto her breast, heaved a sigh, followed it up with a wriggle by way. Then she pulled up the shift above her breast, and when I saw her in this pose, I could not withhold myself from her. And she repeated, O my beloved, let the finish be made of it, for I am thy handmaid. And she ceased not to excite me with sobs and sighs and amorous cries in the intervals of kissing and clasping. Amid our murmurs of pleasure we attained the supreme delight and the term we had in sight. We slept together till the morning, when I would have gone out, but lo, she came up to me laughing and said, So thinkest thou of going to the Hammam? Is the going as going out? Dost thou deem me to be like the daughter of Delilah, the wily one? Beware of such thought, for thou art my husband by contract and according to law. If thou be drunken, return to thy right mind, and know that the house wherein thou art opened but only 1 day in every year. Go down, look at the great door. So I arose, and I went down and found the door locked and nailed up, and returned and told her of the locking and nailing. O Aziz, said she, We have in this house flour, grain, fruits, and pomegranates, sugar, meat, sheep, poultry, and so forth, enough for many years, and the door will not be opened till after the lapse of a whole 12 month. And well I weet thou shalt not find thyself without this house till then. Quoth I, there is no majesty, and there is no might, save in Allah the glorious and the great. And how can this harm thee? Rejoined she, seeing that thou knowest the cock's duty, whereof I told thee. Then she laughed, and I laughed too, and I conformed to what she said, and abode with her, doing a cock's duty, and eating and drinking and futtering for a year, a full 12 months, during which time she conceived by me, and I was blessed with a babe by her. On the New Year's Day I heard the door opened, and behold, men came in with crates and with flour and sugar. And upon this I would have gone out, but my wife said, wait till supper tide, and go out even as thou camest in. So I waited till the hour of night prayer, and was about to go forth in fear and trembling, when she stopped me, saying, by Allah, I will not let thee go until thou swear to come back this night before the closing of the door. I agreed to this, and she swore me a solemn oath on blade and book, and the oath of divorce to boot, that I would return to her. Then I left her, and going straight to the garden, found the door open as usual. Whereat I was angry, and said to myself, I have been absent this whole year, and come here unawares to find the place open as of wont. I wonder, is the damsel still here as before? I needs must enter and see before I go to my mother, more by reason that it is now nightfall. So I entered the flower garden, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I end my tale for this day, till it be morrow.